There we go. Welcome back, everybody. Episode 63 of the Leonis Report. Happy Monday, July 15th. Back again for another basically news update and recap for everyone. But before we dive into things, JB, what's going on, man? How's the night?
Going pretty good. Going pretty good. Had a good weekend. Enjoyed the nice weather outside. It was pretty hot here in New England, so got outside a little bit. How about yourself? How was the weekend?
It was good. Same thing. Went to a local. We went to the Woo Sox game on Saturday. A friend of mine and I, and
Nice.
then pretty extensive bar crawl after that. So I'm still pretty exhausted. So if you guys see any bags under the eyes, I apologize. Those should be gone by next week. But it was a good time, and so yeah, very very fun nonetheless.
Yeah, we had some friends over Saturday night. Had kind of like a game night and up pretty late, doing some drinking and playing some fun board games. So I feel you.
Definitely. That's okay. It was a pretty casual day today, considering that Guild War was locked out for us. Didn't have a whole lot to do there.
No.
Right now, as many of you know, there was a bug today that Guild War was never calculated as of yesterday. It didn't actually lock in the results at all. It went straight into a new matchmaking, and so we'll see what they do. Maybe they'll roll it back. Maybe they'll count it. I don't really know. I do remember they had like a glitch with Lucille on JP's release where something funky happened to the Guild War. Maybe this is like a hot fix. I really conjecture at this point, but something obviously bugged out. And even I think on JP, they didn't get their news release as expected. So maybe there's something going on there. Who knows?
Yeah, it's been kind of quiet. I don't think they've actually even acknowledged this issue, have they? I haven't seen any notices, so I don't know. It's oddly quiet over there, although, we haven't seen a ton of notices these days from them. But yeah, how have you been enjoying Cypher so far?
He's been good. Honestly, it's been fun to try out a new unit because he is competitive. It's not a slam dunk unit to say he's overturning the meta, but he, of all the units you can pick from at the moment, has some of the highest ceiling to compete with them. Where there's been a couple fights where he just walks up to Cypher and just boom, barrier break, re-raise remove, and that's like half the fight already taken care of. And then alternatively, the other alternative happens where Sephiroth gets the first hit, curses him, Gilgamesh follows up, and then Cypher's is dead. So it's little
Right.
bit tough, yeah.
That's really the trouble right now is that Sephiroth's limit burst and that curse effect just effectively counters the majority of the units in the game. So it's really a major X factor in his pocket. And there's no counterplay until Fina comes in really with her limit burst, and that's really going to be the first taste of any kind of counterplay against that. So he's with good reason the highest pick rate unit in all of global.
Yep.
Especially in the top 10, I think he's up to like a 75% pick rate, maybe even higher. So that pretty much every team out there is running him. If you aren't running him, then you're probably on cleanup duty or something.
Absolutely true. And so we have not gotten our own like news release so far yet, but we have a couple things to still cover from last week that we got surprised with. A couple limit break upgrades. We'll go through the limit break upgrades, some MA2s as well. A couple +6 upgrades for equipment that we just want to highlight. There's a new Trial of Reckoning content that is coming in next week though, sometime where we will look at least the accessory that's coming in, give some preliminary thoughts along with the Seifer Vision card, which is also coming in here. And that's basically the crux of it. We have a little bit of a vision card, philosophical Q&A topic to go through at the end there. I quick announcement. We'll reiterate it toward the end too. We will not have a Leona support next week, so sorry to say that in advance. But I will be away on Monday, so we'll touch base on Fina and her card now, just as a quick early snapshot. But at least I know that's going to be the big topic for next week that we're missing out on. So
Yep.
yeah, we'll just dive right into here then. And the first things to go over are the limit break upgrades here. And noticeably for Howlet, or notoriously, or whatever the word is, I can't think. Howlet, El Sorel, Little Leela the Bold. And I think your approach to this is still a good one. I know last week you kind of outlined the way you look at these limit break upgrades. You want to recap again some of the bare minimums you look for in some of these limit break upgrades?
My biggest hope for any of these upgrades, whether it's an MA2 like upgrading a skill or whether it's a limit burst update, is that they're making some attempt to bring these units into the modern state of the game. We went over some of the new effects that have come out in the past year, like seals, like wide guard, like some of the new buffs and things that units have been getting, stuff like going to 4 turns and um, anything like that. It's essentially, the penetrations, the shreds, stuff like that. So
Yep.
in this case, Howlett is getting none of that. He's getting probably one of the weakest limit burst upgrades that we've seen since Perrine.
No
He's
doubt.
right there. This one I think is better than Perrine. I will give it that. Perrine's I think is absolutely useless.
I agree.
This at least, 20% magic damage before you throw this hit out. That's pretty good. They couldn't even give him the XL mod here, so that's a lot of units have been getting that extra damage in the form of just an increased modifier. Um, so yeah, I'm very disappointed with this because he had just gotten a very lackluster MA2 with just like some slash resistance and magic maybe some accuracy, very lackluster. And to get a second update here that's also kind of very mid is, this was never a meta unit. Like you can understand like if they were to give an upgrade like this to an Alaya who was, or a Soul or characters that were kind of the predominant unit when they were released. This guy never really was the guy, and that's unfortunate for like a very kind of lore, a big lore character, I would say, in the
Yeah,
story.
completely agreed. No, I couldn't agree more on all those takes, particularly from the perspective that, this is a diamond AoE, so it is penalized the most by the new AoE wide res. So to your point that, okay, maybe they don't give it AoE wide res dispel. I would have liked that personally, but at the very least, maybe you go with a higher modifier to compensate for it. That if you know that there's this new mechanic that there's no AoE res penetration in his kit, which now is kind of the new normal. That although the 20% damage is coming in here, it's arguably equal to one of those changes. I don't think it's still anything amazing. I don't know. It's literally just a small damage increase, and there is so much dispel of this still floating around that this is rather easily dispellable. Somewhere in the mid fight there, maybe a little bit more difficult to dispel in the mid fight because this is a much shorter range ability. So maybe by that time the enemy AI uses more of like the larger AOE's. But the bottom line is it's not a slam dunk guaranteed upgrade of anything. It's really just a harder hitting version of the limit break, and I don't think the limit break is what was holding him back at all.
Yeah, he doesn't have the secondary survival mechanic. He's got the barrier, and then he can absorb some HP, and then that's really all he can do. It would have been nice to see a courage or a re-raise or something, to kind of enhance their survivability just a tick. Because I feel like this character is close to being like pretty usable, I think.
I agree.
I've seen him being used in arena. He's actually not bad at all with Gilgamesh, with Uldoa. Um, but this being kind of the culmination of his upgrades here now, with both of them having come in, he just the shelf life is not going to be there to kind of propel him forward, unfortunately.
Nope, totally agreed. Totally agreed. And so we won't beat a dead Prince any longer than that. We'll move on to El Sorel, who, again, a blast from the past unit. I can't remember the last time I saw her in PvP. She is still a very good PvE unit, though, where she's got some sub jobs and some chain abilities and slash attacks. And she's, I think, one of those units that people will often bring down to very low bravery as well, so that she kind of is there as like a big time chainer. And so I know that she still has some of a unique niche for that. The upgrades here, there's obviously like a fair bit of them. One of them is that it's going from the cross shape to the diamond shape with a pretty big range extension, in addition to a much cheaper cost, going from 43 to 33. She's also getting the same thing that we saw with Howlett. It's the 20% physical damage for 3 turns, but it's also a break physical barrier. Obviously, a lot of barriers running around nowadays, and she's also getting the big 67% chance to use sleep, which, this is a nice percent because most of the status effect chance that we see for sleep is not this high. It's usually 25 to 50, where it is at this point. Um, I think a lot of the newer units have a lot of sleep res innately. The Trust Stone obviously is a factor, but this 67% chance does still make it very possible. I can't say she's a high faith unit, so it's still not all that great, but overall, I unfortunately I don't think this really does a ton for the PVE angle, unfortunately, where that really was like her chance to shine. You almost don't want her to have this physical damage upgrade for PVE, as we're just talking about, that you don't want her to be your big chain finisher. I don't really think this does anything. Unfortunately, it's a good upgrade enough, but this is an old unit. It's a bad unit.
I mean, I think that the upgrades that she's got, her like her job 25, I think is a select to defense break. I think I want to say
Yep.
that's an exceptional move there with the increased AP consumption on there, the agility break. Between that now and this LB, I could see this unit maybe getting some play before we had entered into this modern era of like
Oh yeah,
loaded stats and everything. Like
yeah.
those two moves there with the J25 and LB are really nice. So maybe she could squeeze into like a cost limited thing or like an arena counter. At top end Guild War, it's not going to happen, but it's a very nice upgrade. Like I'll say that.
Yep, completely agreed. And then Little the Bold, who, long time fan favorite, was a very strong meta unit for a long time. She was one of the first that really kicked off this like diamond AoE meta that was so overpowering for so long. And her limit break is honestly a very good one. So it's going again from this cross shape to a much larger like calculated Ren shape. Also getting cheaper, about that 10 AP overall. It is getting the large modifier increase, so the 200 to the 240. The other thing here is that it's getting a much bigger slash imperil, where it was 38%, now it's 48%. I do think this is still conditional on if you blind the unit, so there is still kind of that little wrinkle in there. But this is also ignore sure hit for herself as well, which I never really knew her as a big time evade unit. I know it was like kind of there, maybe at the peak of things, but I can't imagine this helping her at all nowadays. But I haven't run the math in such a long time. But when you are blind, that greatly amplifies the chance to evade. So I think that's an important part of this. That this really hinges on the blind status effect. I like this upgrade. I think it's a good limit break.
Yeah, same thing with Elstra. I mean, she's getting a couple of different effects here and the range and targeting increase. And she's not going to be competitive with the units out there right now. And unfortunately, she doesn't have like the lower cost angle that Elsie does. Like she's a
Correct.
100 cost unit. So
Right.
it's not like you're going to be breaking her out for like low cost play or anything. To be honest, she can be relatively evasive. Like she has a pretty decent luck number. So if you lean your build into that, you can make some people miss, especially with the ignore sure hit there. I like it. Again, I think they did a pretty nice upgrade here. I just don't see this unit making any sort of crack or comeback, unfortunately.
No, totally agreed.
And especially like she's the dagger group, which is in the gutter. So
Yes.
I had
Yes.
mentioned that last week with when we briefly talked about Zidane. Just no hope for that group right now.
No, it's funny as we're going through this though. We were just earlier talking about like an evade cipher, and I just had that cope in the back of my mind. That go, wait a minute, wait a minute. What if we blind him? Can Cipher dodge more then? Like answers yes. I'm like tempted to like give this a shot now. It's not gonna work, but you're always trying to connect the dots.
Yeah.
But then, so that's what we got for the limit break upgrades. We did get kind of two pushed up releases of Mastery Ability 2 units, or abilities for Jade and the Celebrated and Elia the Alabaster. So they kind of grouped them together, husband and wife, or fiance and fiance, I guess. Um, Jade and the Celebrated obviously never really hit. There was a lot of problems that have never really been addressed, quite frankly, in terms of overall AP management has been horrendously bad. In addition to the fact that he does have some pretty severe magic-oriented weaknesses, and even the general survivability with the very large HP barrier, I don't really think ever felt as tanky as we were hoping it to. And so via the MA2 here, they're doing two things. They're giving him 30% AoE res pen, which is new tech. I actually like that angle, and 10% physical damage reduction to all kinds of physical damage, which is a little more of a newer one too. Obviously, it's about a year since they've started to roll this out. I'll be honest. I don't think these addressed his weaknesses. I think these really only try to keep him up with what he's trying to already do. And so, from that perspective, are they good upgrades? Yes. Are they what he needed? No, because his damage was already very bad. This just gets him maybe salvageable. And even the physical damage reduction, I don't think this 10% is really changing any breakpoints or fixing any of the other weaknesses out there. So it's a thumbs up in that it's new tech. I know that's our barometer, but again, this is the kind of unit that unfortunately needs, I think, a fair bit more.
The MA2s generally don't move the needle all that much.
Good point.
But I mean, two nice effects here. Like you said, these are newer. They're not giving him like slash resistance and magic resistance. So these are relevant. And if you think about Chariot, they're just the Chariot Esper. He can use that and get 50% area
Yes.
resistance penetration. I think we talked about that a couple of weeks ago. Jaden is, similar to Howlet. He has been relatively usable with that Oldoa and Gilgamesh, kind of the mono ice team. Unfortunately, it's just not a top sort of competitive team because Jaden just gets absolutely shredded by either Gilgamesh or Sephiroth. He
Yeah.
can at least take a hit or two from Sephiroth because he does have that barrier and stuff can't break it. But Gilgamesh absolutely slaps him around.
Definitely so. Yeah, I've always felt bad because this large diamond ability of his just doesn't do enough for being a good unit. The healing power down of 50 is, I feel like everyone has this nowadays. All the good units have this plus two or three other things. And so, it is on like a lower modifier ability. It is kind of nice that it is kind of like a projectile one, so there's some cool like map related things. I think they really did swing and miss on this unit though, with not doing more with this hate mechanic one. I feel like this is where he would have really shined and being kind of like an anti-tank X's and O's unit. And this ability just does not get used often enough to have any real value. That if you're just sitting there spamming Magellant's Rain two or three times, you're not going to win a fight doing that.
Yeah, I think we've talked about this before. They needed to have that hate mechanic on the Diamond AoE and just reset the hate for the entire team if he happens to hit everybody. And then you have a unit that probably would have been played a lot more because when he came out, we were very heavy in tank metas with, Dialdo, Glassy, Raph,
Yep.
all in play at that time. Unfortunately, compared to Elia, he just got completely shafted when it comes to just about everything.
Yep. And I just want to circle back. Winslow just brought up a good point in chat, saying that all these MA2s just feel like lip service. Doesn't do much of anything with new gen units having inflated stats, and I don't think we disagree with that. I think to your point a second ago, new gen units have way more in their abilities, and historically these MA2s have not been big needle movers. So you made a good point of that. I feel like it's worth emphasizing, but it's also worth asking the question: just because they've always done something a certain way, is that the reason to keep doing it now? And that probably doesn't feel very good. Like, sure, just because MA2s have historically not been amazing, is that the reason why they can't be amazing? I feel like that doesn't have a very strong leg to stand on.
Yeah, I mean, I think they need to take a look in the mirror and consider why are they giving these units MA2s, and it's to give them a second life in the meta. And these units just aren't getting that right now. And so it feels like to Winslow's point, it does feel like lip service. It does feel wasted until some other mechanic comes in to deal with this year's power creep because limit bursts we know were to deal with last year's power creep in
Right,
the third year. So
right.
they're and those, to be honest, haven't been good enough to keep up with last year. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at.
No, totally. And then the next one here for the MA2 was Elia. And you made a good point earlier again that a lot of these units that have been very meta for a long time, they do typically go a little bit light on the upgrades. I know the ones that immediately come to mind were the Ice Missile girls, Elia, the original Elia, and Eliza. Like, they had their time, they kind of went light. I think even whatever, I won't waste time thinking about it. But for Elia, they gave her 20 AoE res, and this, I think you could make the case is very inadequate at the moment where a lot of these top meta units are beginning to not only get AoE crush, so that 20% is not going to be 20% in most fights, and B, just straight up AoE penetration. So this value, while certainly nice to have here now, I don't even think she's a unit that has any kind of debuff. No debuff weakening. So that AoE resistance is going to just get crushed by almost everything. So this is a very light MA2 upgrade.
I will push back just a little bit. Like for the most part, I do agree with you, but the Fist group does have multiple debuff weakening cards, so she can at least get to like the 40-50%
Oh,
debuff
okay, I
weakening
didn't know it was that
range
high. Okay, I knew there was one
relatively
card, but
easily.
that's good. That's a good number.
like the glassy card is the main card, and I believe they have a secondary card as well, if I'm not mistaken. Um, but like with her buff, gives her 30% area resist. This gives her 20. Throw a vision card in there. Like she can get up to, 80, 90%. So even if she's able to protect like 40 to 50% of that, it's not terrible. But again, 30% of it is dispellable. So that is kind of the biggest concern right now because Sephiroth is the big bad meta unit. He's dispelling everybody with his huge diamond attack. So yeah, it's okay. It's but yeah, like you said, this was the predominant meta unit for many months. She didn't really deserve to be like brought back in necessarily.
Yep. Nope, that's fine. I'm happy with it regardless. It's helps. For those that like Strike, it's a welcome addition, I'm sure. But as
Yeah.
we move on here, that's really all we had for the unit updates. There were some small equipment ones, which we haven't had as many as of late. I feel like it's been a couple weeks since we really saw some. And to be fair, most of these plus sixes as of late, I feel like have underwhelmed me personally. I can't remember the last time some of these plus sixes came out and being like, wow, this is really good. There's a couple. It's a little more sparing. And so the Astral Rod coming in here, I do think this is actually a noticeably good bump for the accuracy build of this, going up to 24%. That is certainly like a material enough number. The only other upgrade here is that it's getting an extra 10 modifier here on the magic attack. And so again, you asked the question, is 10 magic attack really going to do anything for any unit wearing this, namely Soul? And the answer is really not really. It's certainly nice, worth doing, but not an amazing upgrade.
I think the situations where these things can help you out is if like you're mocking and you're using soul and maybe the Gilgamesh is, after he uses his pyre, he's got like a couple hundred HP.
Just barely,
Maybe,
right.
yeah, like then you can maybe, okay, this is something you can maybe bring in to maybe do some extra damage. Although I don't think it's going to be more than what
Wizard Rod?
the wizard rod would give you right now. So I don't know. The reaction block though, maybe that's material. Maybe you get an extra 10% there. Um, so maybe that's maybe the main reason that you would go with this one.
Yeah. Again, all these are welcome and they're fine, but I don't think any of these have ever said, like, oh, you can now use a unit because they got a plus six on the weapon. It's very rare that that
Oh,
happens. Yeah.
no doubt.
The next one here, though, this is for Grifford. The Raging Bardiche is getting an upgrade here, and the only thing really changing, so real quickly, um, this is a relatively high crit rate number. It's not a huge jump from what it already was, so I probably would lean more toward the good old fashioned attack build. And off the top of my head, I don't think he has a lot of critical hit mechanics in his kit. It's been a little while since I've used him, so I don't know if that crit number really even has any value to him in particular. But they are giving him an extra 7 unit res, and this is kind of similar to what we're seeing as the status quo. I know Shal's weapon had something similar as like a 70 cost unit. Her AoE res I think went up by 7% as well. I don't hate this because right now the thing with the unit res, it's not as often. It is getting crushed, but not as often, and there's no unit wide res. It's only unit res and that's it. AoE res has two different ways they can kind of like butcher you: AoE res and AoE wide res. And this single target resistance is still kind of like a thing, particularly for all these follow up attacks. That 7% is still relatively good because there's really no other ways that people are doing single target damage. It's fine.
It's great to get that on a weapon that
Yeah.
you're going to use anyway. And it's a great weapon for him. I don't know how much use he has in the game right now, but yeah, he's still a 70 cost tank. So for limited play, you can maybe take a look at him.
Yeah, definitely. And the last one here is part of the Trial of Reckoning update that's coming in, which segues nicely to what we'll talk about after this, which is the new Trial of Reckoning item. And this one is, for the most part, off the top of my head, I think it's only getting the increase of 5% to the slash and strike. I don't think they actually touched any of the abilities here of the units themselves. It's just an
No,
extra 5% for strike res and slash res. So relatively minor, inconsequential. I think it's probably more for the strike res more than anything, where your average strike unit, well, I can't even say that. Strike res penetration's gotten pretty high overall, so it's kind of whatever.
it's the highest strike res piece in the game.
Yeah,
That's kind of the unique thing about it. For Squall, I think it's still a good item because it doubles up on the honeycomb barrier between range 3 to 5. So he can get like some significant. This is a physical only, like a mini honeycomb barrier. We've done or you've done a little bit of testing with Squall, and it hasn't been great. I think that he just got the upgrades a little bit too late as water has kind of died down. But I don't. I think for Irvine, it's also decent because he gets like some human killer on there also.
Yes.
So yeah,
Yep. But they also did they put this on the Empyrean? No, they didn't. That's okay. I'm not the Empyrean. The new weapon he got. I don't think they did. I can't remember. Uh,
I can't remember either.
it's Irvine. It doesn't matter. Unfortunately, be pessimistic, but I'll be honest. I've actually used Irvine a fair bit in arena and free match, and it's pretty bad. It's not awful, but like it's not competitive with the moment I see a meta team. It's beating all the teams that are really not that good, quite frankly. But any team that has like an actual like competitive standing, the Irvine team loses. And I tried because Seifer as a dark unit, I've been going for the mono dark team, and I'm like, yeah, let me try with Raph. She's got the new upgraded aura. Does that help at all? Where you stack a little bit of a physical aura. Then again, it doesn't actually overlap, I don't think, with Irvine's new MA2 because it's technically the physical damage percent still, but I think it's the
Mhm.
same. You know what I mean? Like that doesn't stack, but his is hit related, so maybe because it's hit related, it does stack. I don't know.
That's true because it comes on as limit burst, right? It wasn't like passively added.
No, it comes on
The
his
physical.
MA2. His MA2 is 25% physical damage reduction.
Oh, it should stack then because that's passively on him. It's not a buff or anything, so it should stack with the aura from Raph.
Okay, well, it's not noticeable if it is. So, um, but
Yeah, I think maybe like a secondary missile unit would be better than trying to tank damage to like proc his follow up more. But yeah, I
yeah,
don't know if it's like a competitive team.
no. But we do have the Trial of Reckoning coming in next week with a brand new item here for Final Fantasy VIII. And I'll be honest, I actually think this is a very good item. You'd called out earlier an excellent stat on here of the accuracy that I didn't really think of when I was looking at this because typically you just kind of default to either the shield or the magic. But I think it's clear as day you go with the accuracy build of this. I think that's a sizable number here.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'll pause because I was talking about the other one. Do you want to go over the rest of the item here? Just kind of the attributes?
Especially like for Seifer because his Hyperion weapon gives him a 15 accuracy
Yes,
passive.
correct.
So it's you can almost get like close to an Alex ring. It's not quite there, but um I mean he's so accurate anyway that this will be enough for him for most situations. But like the various passive effects here I think for are nice for pretty much everyone. I think Renoa again gets kind of the short end of the stick, but even hers isn't terrible. It could be worse. Everybody is getting the 30 crit evasion in addition to just having 13 in the base stats, so a significant amount of crit evasion there. I think that's even more than you get or equivalent to the Maximilian, right? That's also 30. So
Yes.
this is and that universe that's something that you can put on any unit in the game. I think that's pretty relevant right now, especially with Gilgamesh and kind of the follow-up meta that we're in, and a lot of people building into crit and crit damage at the moment. So I kind of like that right now. Irvine's getting a really nice thing here with the human killer on physical with the unit resistance. Squall getting it's okay, get some crit damage and AoE res. Seifer is getting the best out of the bunch here. Reduced physical damage, 10%, awesome, and AoE resistance. So he's kind of doubling up on the bulk there. So yeah, it's a nice piece. I'm gonna build a couple of them.
I am too. I did think, sort of pointing out, I was very intrigued that they gave Cypher the AoE resistance, considering on the Hyperion, he already has it here, which does not stack. They're both in the box stats, and I feel like that's kind of irregular. They're usually really good about like not overlapping some of those stats. That being said, I actually don't know if this is like the best in slot weapon for him. I feel like we've had good results with the Blood Sword and the Mythgraven Blade, alternatively, where
Yeah.
these things are certainly nice, but I don't think it's a must have for him in some of these builds. But I do like this Trial of Reckoning item for him. I do think he's the biggest winner on here. The crit evade, I couldn't agree more. I think this is the best angle people can take against Gilgamesh at the moment. The biggest damage cut reduction you can do is the crit damage that he does on that follow up. It's almost double in many instances, and so you jack up that crit evade. Not all units can wear that Maximilian armor. This is obviously way more than you would get on a Truststone passive, and that's assuming you even go for the Truststone passive, which 99% of people don't, nor should you. I think that's a waste of a Truststone passive slot at this time. So to get this 30% for free is certainly a big increase there. It's not going to do much for Renoa or Irvine or Squall, who are already very behind. But for Seifer in particular, I do think it's a very noteworthy thing in that matchup. Obviously, in addition to the AoE res and the physical damage, where Gilgamesh and Sephiroth kind of chain you down with those large diamonds. So that being said, excellent weapon accessory. I agree. I'm getting a couple of them. I can't see myself using it on more than just Seifer though.
Probably not. Yeah. But I mean, going back to your point about the doubling up on the AoE res between his sword and this item, I agree. It is irregular for them, and I can't recall them ever doing that in the past. But I don't mind it in this case because it does give you some options.
Correct.
Like you said, you can go with Mythgraven, you can go with Bloodsword, and still get the area resist. Alternatively, if you wanted unit resistance or some other armor piece, you can get the area resistance and then use like a survival vest or something like that. So, more options is always better. So I think that's fine.
Yeah, no, totally agreed. But we also have this week coming in his new vision card, which, a lot of people using Seifer right now are doing pretty well. He's doing pretty decent, all things considered. Considering how strong the Met is, this card really though is a big building block for helping him get some more consistency. Where this is an overlap between Fist, but also Sword Warrior and Sword Knight, and that overlap of Sword Warrior and Sword Knight really is where I think one of his stronger angles is. Where Sword Warrior as a class is a little bit on the weaker side at the moment. Sword Knight does have some really good, candidates though to overlap with him. King Mont comes to mind, obviously for many, but I do think that when you look at the effects of this, that you get the human killer, the area res, the slash res. This is a very nice 5% agility bestowed, where units are very fast at the moment. I do think this is a good card to throw in there, where I don't think they have any AoE res card between them at this time. That's Sword Warrior and Sword Knight. So this is like a building block in that regard.
Yeah, this is the first area resist card for either of those groups. So
Yeah. Thank you.
significant release actually. So if for folks that are having any hopes that of playing those groups or have been investing in units in those groups like Lucio, like Seifer, like Mont, 100% you should try to get this card. I think out of everything in this kind of mini collab rerun, this is the top top of the pecking order as far as I'm concerned.
Totally agreed. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you can say more than that. It's got
Yeah.
everything you want at the moment. The physical human killer we've seen has been more consistent in just making sure that you can put different types of damage types together. Where I know some of these units have like a pierce sub job. Well, this human killer applies to that. Same thing for any of these units that don't have similar attack types like slash attack, and you have strike attack here. Obviously, I don't really see a huge upside with the strike angle here, but for strike units, they also have a fair amount of area res card option. So I don't think for fist units this is an enormous upgrade. But when you add in the fact that it's got a little bit of luck, the extra agility here, the human killer affects some of the follow up attacks on units like 2P and Ketone. That I could see this being a best in slot upgrade as well. Maybe not. Let me rock that back. Maybe not best in slot, but an equal contributor from a vision card selection.
Yeah. I think the biggest winner though is like you said with the Sniper kind of trying to group up with Mont, because when you're trying to play that right now, it's pretty good. It's okay, but this is going to kind of inch it up and bring it up a little bit better. And that area resist is hugely impactful right now. Even though Gilgamesh can shred it, getting a 24% value, that's still like, that's about what 10-11% of mitigation there just from this vision card. So
Yep.
definitely worth to still primary that stat.
And forgive me for a second, guys. I just wanted to check something here. Party effects, Earth. I wanted to see Earth AoE res cards. This is one of them, right? Yeah, yeah. So among the AoE res options for Earth, it's Dark Golem, which is an exceptional vision card still. To this day, one of my favorites to still use. You do have the Dreams of Heroism option, which this one is good, but it's lost a little bit of its luster over time, where the TP is relevant. But I was trying to essentially point out how good a lot of these Earth units are on here.
Yeah.
I don't think this is amazing, but if you are a player that really likes using mono Earth, you have that Veritas of the Earth unit maybe coming to fruition in a month or two. You still got Bradley, who can be used in some of these pinch here. 2P, certainly has been phased out, but I think this card is an upgrade for Earth compared to the other AoE res cards, but maybe not. It's close.
It's definitely competitive, at least with it. You kind of run maybe into the issue of the human killer overlapping with Dark Siren vision card.
Good call.
That's kind of, or with Titan if you're maybe going for an evasion build.
Good call.
So maybe not 100% needed, but yeah, I definitely, out of all the units on the card, Earth has definitely got the most here, most representation. Shout out to Greatestness in the chat. He said the art on this is amazing.
Agreed.
100% agree. I love when they do the sort of the War of the Visions artwork take. We saw this as well with Tifa's vision card for the Advent Children collab, where they do the kind of the War of the Vision spin on the artwork. So definitely a big fan of it.
Absolutely. And Swamp Princess just asked a question. I think it's a good one. What's your thoughts on them rerunning these collabs with only one new unit and VC like Final Fantasy VIII, where the only new thing here is Seifer and his VC? I know with 13, that collab was just Fang and her VC, if I recall. If we have any thoughts on how they are doing that at this time, anything come to mind for you?
I don't think that's really anything different than what we've seen in the past for reruns.
Mm-hmm.
Like Kefka was the same deal. Um, Golbez was the same deal. Like there's been a number of them where it's just been one unit and maybe a vision card. So yeah, it's fine. I don't think we need to blow it out with 4 units and a bunch of vision cards. It's just unaffordable at that point. So this is kind of a breather week, I think, for veterans.
It is. It is. No, and I know you and I both have felt the upsides of, we pulled Squall and Renoa and Irvine, and so it was very easy to build Cipher because I think you had like 1,000 Mind Spheres at least ready to go, between the Chocobo and
Yeah.
the halftime barracks last week. So if you do 4 whole new units, it's almost impossible to build them, and you'll be drained like the collaboration we just went through with Final Fantasy VII. I don't think that style is sustainable, so I don't hate this. Obviously, it kind of stinks that 3 out of your 4 units are power crept. I don't think that feels good for players coming into the game as a content creator to be like, don't pull on anything except for Cipher. Like that feels kind of bad, but I don't know how else you do it.
I think maybe there's like some carryover from the past where it did feel maybe a little bit bad when we got Final Fantasy VI back and it was just Kefka and a vision card and then the upgrades. And we know like we're just not going to see that again for years or maybe never. Um, and that's kind of how it used to feel. Like maybe we were left wanting more because the collabs came around so infrequently. But if we're going into an era like as the JP producers letter promised of more collabs, more frequently than we've ever seen before. These smaller reruns that are kind of just a quick hit thing, I think is going to be is going to be good.
Yeah, no, totally agreed. Totally agreed. But yeah, that's all there is to say on this card. Definitely pull it. It's best in slot card for many of these units, and that's all we can say for now. But
Yeah.
we will tease a little bit of Fina, where again, to reiterate those that might have been a little bit late here, there is no Leonis support next week. Apologize, I will not be available. So it's not this week Fina's coming out; it's next week. We have talked about her a bit already, not only in the preliminary thoughts when she was first announced, but we did a couple weeks ago do a Lucille versus Fina breakdown and talk about how different they are. We obviously have had more time go on where we've been able to see a lot of these things firsthand. We've also had the now extra foresight of seeing units like Shreka come in and what she does to the game. in addition to what else might come in the next week with the new JP announcement. What are you thinking about Fina right now in terms of just general thoughts? Anything that you want to, as a talking point?
Well, I mean, we know that it was kind of set up to that she works very well with Cloud and Seifer both, and that when she first came out, that team actually was doing quite well there for a week or two. It was very short-lived though, because Shurika came in, or Shrek came in, and kind of turned the meta over there on its head. To be honest, her play rate still was pretty decent. Kind of looking at her in the top 10 on Votive stats, about 15 to 16% on attack and defense. It's not great, but it's not like it's chopped liver. So I think that she's still a competitive support. Obviously, she's going to be the only unit in the game that has any sort of counterplay against Curse, other than Shrek, who kind of has that innately. But she can actually remove this as a next gen unit. There are some older units that can null it, like the clerics, and there's Esanaga and things. But this is really the only sort of competitive, I would say, counterplay to it with her limit burst.
I totally agree, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to get the votive stats data here just to hit on what you were talking about. Pick rate wise, yeah, attacking defense here, she's coming in. I can't read Japanese. What, 16% there, I think. Yeah, still a relatively decent enough pick rate. The fact that she's playable at all in top 10. What the is this a Black Rose Helena icon here at the far right? Who is playing Black Rose Helena in the top 10? That is new.
I think that she's gotten a bump since Shrek came out. Like, her play rate has actually gone up a bit.
I did not think of that. I have not heard about that. I'm sorry, guys. That was a live reactive.
I don't think it's like a top team or anything, but I think that
it's on
Shrek has opened the door for her to come back a little bit.
Yeah, get that reflect online and have her kill herself on it. I like it. I like it. Actually, there's probably some very fun mechanics with the follow-up attacks and how the follow-up attacks get redirected back to you. I think those get reflected also, off the top of my head.
I mean, if you think back to Helena's kit, like, notoriously she could get up to like 70 plus unit resistance, and she had like I think she has like 25 or 35% magic reduction, like, just as part of her passives or whatever. So she's a very anti-magic unit. So I can definitely see her kind of going against Shrek and maybe not doing too badly, especially with the sleep, high chance to sleep, and she's got the obviously, Shrek is going to be high faith unit, and she's more anti-physical. So honestly, I don't hate it.
No, me neither. Very intriguing, but sorry for the sidebar. But Fina, yes, good overall support. The big thing that I think people are going to have to think about a little bit differently is oh my goodness, where is it? She has right here, the seal debuffs for 3 turns, and I think this is still mistranslated if I recall. Is this seal debuffs?
No, that's
accurate?
that's correct. That's correct.
That's fantastic. Right. This is a major core piece of how she can help mitigate damage in terms of not allowing healing power down, not allowing any kind of imperils. All of those things really add up for making sure that she can do her job properly in terms of getting people up to full. Yeah, that limit break, obviously, there is some X's and O's in terms of making sure you use it at the proper time, because if you miss time this limit break usage, you still get beat anyway. But still looks like a very strong unit overall. I do think Seifer is a very good piece with her, as you pointed out. I think Cloud is too. We're going to see a resurgence in both of those with the light and dark overlap. But yeah, definitely looking forward to this unit. But I am likely passing, unfortunately, on her personally. I went pretty hard into Lucille.
Yeah, I mean, Lucielle is still getting a higher pick rate in JP. I think she's like in the low 20s.
Yep.
Like 22%. So she's been more favored there, but I think that she kind of works in more teams, I think. Although I have seen a pretty nice team with Shrek, with Gilgamesh, and Fina being played in the top 10 with pretty nice results. It's not like a widely used team, but seems like it's doing okay. And honestly, I can see that synergy. I think they're at least two of the groups are on Chariot's card. So
Yeah,
um, I don't know. It's not a meta unit, at least right now. It's a compelling support unit, maybe as an option. It is permanent pool. So, I mean, the thing is at this point, like the bottom line is we have a pending collab announcement in JP. We've got summer units coming in. You know, do people really want to be spending 12K on a unit that's not going to really push the needle forward? At that point, you know, fans of the unit, sure. You know, mono light players, sure. Um, bow mains, sure. If there is any out there.
yep,
But yeah, that's she's fine.
it's true. And although maybe irrelevant, I know as a tongue in cheek joke, I still can't trust missile units, and so she is still in that category. I don't know how many times I can get burned by the copium of a missile unit. Obviously, as a support, she doesn't have any of the real overlap of normal missile units in terms of what makes them deficient compared to other units. But still, she's in that category, and even Rosa did not set a high benchmark to start in that regard. Um, but
I love those. I love that the tech though. You know, the
yes,
ceiling debuff and the limit burst getting rid of curse. The problem is it's just not both of those are not something you can count on because unless you like are tune in for a specific movement, like in an arena where you kind of know what's going to happen. If you're in kind of a blind setup where you're not sure of the enemy movements, you can't guarantee that she's going to be able to hit the specific unit you want or number of units to actually get this amazing utility with the ceiling debuffs.
correct.
Um, and the same thing with the limit burst, like you said. I wish that they had done the dispel, but also the nullify for 3 turns, and
Yes.
then it would have been perfect. But yeah,
Yeah, couldn't agree more on that, on both those points. Very well said. And again, not to dissuade anybody, she is an excellent unit. She's got great innate survivability. This is genuinely not a unit you need to worry about reincarnating. There's not a lot that relies on those extra stats where she's got the 2-time Mirage, enough AoE and debuff weakening for herself, the full life capability to kind of like get a jail out of free card for some of these units that maybe died when you weren't expecting it. Even the, Asuna on this lower cure ability, very nice that if you're not working hard on your trust stones and maybe you get affected by one of these, she can still clear it for you pretty easily. You know, not all of them are meta, but like Frostbite certainly is. Berserk is certainly still around. Those are definitely ones to look out for. That even the concept of the honeycomb barrier being a missile unit is a very smart survivability mechanic. That there's a lot of good stuff here. It's a good unit.
yeah, I think for folks that are sitting on like 10 or 12K paid and they're kind of weighing their options here between Fina and Shrek,
Oh, it's got to be Shrek.
it's got to be it's got
Yeah,
to be Shrek.
yeah,
Like that is the more that I mean that is the unit that is actually going to push you forward and help you be competitive. This is like an X's and O's unit that's, you know, like we've seen with Lucio, like they're not going to win the match single-handedly for you. You need other pieces to be competitive with that unit. Whereas a unit like Shrek is really, you know, going to be the one man or one woman show for your team.
absolutely. And Afina is coming in with a vision card though, and again, this is 2 weeks from now, not this week. And this does look to be an interesting one. I don't know if it's one of my favorites, but it's got some good enough overlaps here. I know my big personal favorite, although the bow is on here, I actually like the Great Sword and Sword Warrior combination there, where, Sword Warrior, we're talking about with Seifer. There's some vision card overlaps. I think this is a really good one because Sword Warrior and Great Sword do have a lot of really good vision cards already. That this really does strengthen that synergy. Obviously, it does for bow as well, but the pool of bow units is small enough. It's not a major consideration for me. Glove units, not that strong either. That sure, if you're running Addison Ray in a mono light team, maybe this works with some of the Cloud Cipher and Addison Ray. But God, we are really going down the well on that one. But this is still obviously 18% agility. I've come to really appreciate this percentage number now, given where how high some of the agility numbers are. That 3% agility often is some of the extra agility point difference that compared to the 15%. We always knew that, but I think I really feel it now in a lot of these matchups where the agility is just so close in being a hard, min maxed. The 20 free accuracy is certainly nice as well, and the 25% HP, that little bit of extra bulk. I know when you're building a team with a support or a healer, really making sure you have large health pools is a big benefit because the last thing you want to do is die. If you die, it, it's over. You've lost the value of the support. But as long as you have 1 HP, that support can get you back 11k HP. You're golden. So that HP pool is quite often the difference maker in some of these brawl and sustain teams. That as long as everyone's alive, I don't care if you're 1 HP or 1,000 HP, Fina's got a chance to get you back up. That HP could be the difference maker.
Absolutely. I mean, traditionally we've thought of HP as a secondary stat. However, this is a card that enables you to bring that into your primary slots as well, because this is an agility card and an accuracy card, like three relevant party stats here for anyone, which I actually like. It's not like one stat is tinged towards somebody that's magical or physical.
Right.
This is useful for everyone in the party, so I really like that. It's an excellent mono light card, actually, kind of going back to the point on the last one with Earth. A lot of pretty much all the best light units here or the most recent ones. So I know that this was the card that folks over in JP were actually. I need to update this and put. I need to put Seifer on here. I don't have that here.
Ah, good call out. Yep.
He's missing from the dark column, so I need to fix that. But
Yeah.
yeah, this was a card that they were using to mix Seifer, Cloud, and Fina together, and it fit like a glove because they also have Dark Bahamut, and you throw Cloud's Vision card in there, and then you're good to go.
Yeah. Absolutely. But no, that's really what we wanted to talk about here. Just catching up on some of the comments in chat here real quickly. Uh, Thunder Mage has a quote here. And actually, Thunder Mage, we're going to get to your Q&A in a second here. He's saying Lucille won't win the match single-handedly for you. Sometimes it does happen. Funnily enough, I think that's one of my favorite things playing her so far. Is there's some fights she's absolutely useless. Team gets cursed, nothing happens. And I've had some fights where she like 1v2s people and like lands a disable or two and then just kills them over time and like, keeps healing herself up. They eventually get to 0 AP. They can't do it, and it's like someone described her as a cockroach, and I'm like, bro, accurate. Like, there's some fights, and it's very interesting to watch how boom or bust she can be sometimes.
Yeah, she can win those like war of attrition battles for sure.
Yeah, it's not amazing. There's sometimes where Gilgamesh will walk up on her and damage cap her, or he's got the double hit, so it'll be bam 8k, bam 8k, and you're like, well, okay, she's fucking done. But it's not always.
Yeah.
But yeah, ending things here. I know we're getting closer toward the end of the hour. We will open it up for a live Q&A here like we normally do these last couple weeks, but we do have one question in particular from Thunder Mage about vision cards, which I thought was a really good... Oh, Thunder Mage, that was you that called her a cockroach. Thank you. The question is, do you feel like job vision cards influence the rate of power creep, lifespan of meta, or meta diversity? Basically, what's the influence of job VCs nowadays in terms of game balance, if you were to sum that up more distinctly? Did you want me to kick things off? Do you have a general feeling on that as an answer?
I have a couple of thoughts I
Yeah.
can kick it off with. So I think they absolutely had a major effect on power creep because they finally have, even before like this second generation units, we've been getting these job vision cards for almost 2 years now. I think it was 2022 Halloween was the first one, and for the first thing, we're getting three effects. They're all higher in their values than they were on the mental vision cards, and they included new tech like reaction block. Now they're including things like debuff weakening and wide res and things like that you just can't get on the old vision cards, and that is a detriment to those mono element teams and why they're kind of difficult or more difficult to play than they have been in the past. So they have sort of cemented the rainbow era that we're currently in.
Yeah. No, I agree, and I think the big thing I've learned nowadays is that a lot of these to really drive metas typically require two major attributes of some kind. I think there's been a couple of them where I had some copium where it was just like an agility card and maybe two other attributes that were kind of fine, but maybe not all that material. But there's been a couple of these cards that have two slam dunk ones, like uh, you're seeing here the Great Sword one of the luck and agility. I know even like the Cloud one with the attack percent and the unit res, that 60% attack is a major power creep jump for those units. That there's a lot of these cards that I really do think that the ones that have the two big effects on it are kind of the bigger drivers. Not all vision cards are equal, and I think we know that. I don't think anyone's saying they are, but I think I've known that more as of late. And the other thing I feel like in terms of changing power creep, I don't think there's always one singular vision card that makes a meta. I really think a lot of these metas are made by like a perfect storm of what finally came out, where a lot of these mono teams like Mono Strike, Mono Black Mage, Mono Greatsword, that doesn't seem like an accident. Like those are like six vision cards right down the middle. Six plus. Strike has like 8 to 10 vision cards that they could use in that team. That I think in some of these very hard metas and the power creep metas, I still think it's mostly character driven. Like it's still the good units overcome good vision cards, but you can't overcome good vision cards when it's like all of them and it's all the best ones. So like you're seeing right now with Gilgamesh and Sephiroth, they only need a couple vision cards to really shine because they're the ones really driving it. But for a team like a Mono Greatsword team, A2 had a long life here, partially because of how much Greatsword got, in addition to the good units, but all the vision cards they had really kind of sustained them. So I think for like meta stuff, I still think characters are what drive the metas, but there are occasionally times here where things align perfectly in these mono job cards that you can't really tell until it's there because it's six cards, right? You don't know
Yeah.
which card's going to be until all six of them are out. So you just got to pull and hope that you have them when the meta comes around.
And I mean, 100% agree with what you're saying. But and then at the same time though, it's like the unit comes and then the vision card comes the next week. So if you have like a defining unit that comes like a Helena and a VV kind of came within a couple weeks of each other, and then VV's card came in with the 60% magic and or the 50% magic and the area resist
Right. That was
combination.
huge.
It's a Yeah, totally drove that team because they already had great demon that they could mix in there with it. So that team was ready to go. They had the units, they had the cards, and that was the meta for a number of months. Same thing happened with A2, like you said. It just took a little bit longer for all the pieces to come in, but once they were there, that meta was also cemented. And that's kind of what we've seen here with the Red Mage and Katana setup as well. Once Chariot came in, that team kind of went into the stratosphere with how good it could be. So
Yep.
um, yeah, I think that they're kind of tied to each other.
I agree. And there was a small part two to that where, Thunder Mage was trying to think of how you could still fine tune it a little bit. And he specifically had this idea to say, include these to be more than just job based, but also maybe re add in elements to them to at least allow for some mono element play. Me personally, I would probably try not to go that way. I feel like vision cards are already so complex as they are, with as limited information and insight that we have to like min maxing certain teams. Like, thank God we have your resource of that spreadsheet. Like, if we didn't, job vision cards would be an absolute nightmare. So to suddenly start throwing in other X factors of like, now there's an element associated with it. Even right now, there's enough to keep track of with the hollow effects. I don't always remember off the top of my head what the hollow effect applies to in terms of like, is it for arena? Is it for guild war? Like there's so much to those that I don't think I would want the vision cards to really be built out any more than they already are.
Yeah, I mean that just makes it feel even worse when you can't get that card, that and the FOMO kind of gets taken to another level. And then at that point, how much more are they going to charge for the cards with even more effects and kind of have that whole ball of wax? But I don't know. At this point, I'm just hoping that they implement stars back for these holo cards so that they're not costing us so much. That could
Definitely.
be the best. That's the best thing that they could do, and to be honest, for the player base, because that's going to open up those cards to more players, and more players can be competitive, and then PvP is better.
Definitely. And so we are at kind of this like Q and A section that we do have some good Q and A here already. that kind of segues nicely. Uh, I'll do this first question here from Chris Metz that think there's a job class that has good units but not enough cards to work. Um, it's a good question because, like I was just saying a second ago, usually good units still work despite them. I don't know if there's a class that comes to mind of good units that can't work because of the vision cards. Um,
I wouldn't say that it can't work, but I do think that Seifer's warrior group is being held back just a little bit, at least before we get his card. And then Fina's card is also going to add into that picture. But like right now, they only have Seifer's card is going to be the 14th card, so that they are on the lower end of the spectrum in terms of like total amount of cards. And even if you have all the effects covered for like a mono job team, if you have a less amount of cards, that's going to limit you with who you can overlap with. Just limits your options. That's like why the red mage team has been so good, and why the katana team has been so good, just because they have so many cards. So
yeah, yeah. I
that's
don't.
probably the closest one that I could think of.
I agree.
There's a couple of groups that just don't really have anything, like Book and Bow. Bow's been actually has been getting better
Posing better.
recently.
Yeah,
Like Ninja is like completely out to dry. The Dagger group is out to dry. There's a few of them that are just like haven't really gotten much of any support for a while.
absolutely agreed. Um, no, it's a good one. And then Winslow asked a question here. What do we think of Gumi giving old units stat board upgrades? Um, like OG Eld and Rob. I know we've talked about various ways that they can deal with power creep. I think, speaking for both of us, I don't think we would like that personally. I know for me, I wouldn't. The thing when you do board, like just straight board upgrades, to me, I would rather them just do cheaper reincarnations. I think that's still a better universal option if you're just going to give people flat stats because most of these vision card things scale off of base stats. And so if you're just giving raw stats out, I think you start getting into a gray zone of is it enough? Is it too much? And honestly, it's just not practical. Where I don't think they're going to go through 200 units and arbitrarily just to start assigning extra stats. It could work, but I don't think it's enough either.
I think one way that I've thought of that they could do it is that they implement like an Elder Awakening for these legacy units, and it would work maybe similar to how they've done it with the vision cards, where you can spend like a relatively modest amount of your medals, give them the awakening so that it's accessible for everyone, and then that just increases your stat caps on the reincarnation.
I'll say it sounds like
Maybe,
it sounds like you're describing reincarnation.
I mean, basically, I mean it's just enhancing the amount that you can reincarnate them.
I like it. Yeah,
But
there's
just do
definitely a.
that with just do that with they could do it with stat pots. Like there's so many different ways that they could do the same thing.
I do like that approach. That is a creative way to use a system that's already kind of in place with the vision cards and apply it to units too. I do like that.
I don't think just stats is the hold is what's holding those units back though. It's also the kits. Because where their buffs are getting like one effect or maybe two effects. All the latest units are getting like 6 or 7 effects with new tech on top of that. So they need also some adjustment to the jobs on top of just the stats.
Greatestness has a question here. Did Gumi power creep way too fast? That every element wasn't even built out, and they then jumped into job VCs already. What happened to the dual element angle for a little while there? I mean, they're still going with dual elements. I do. I'll be honest. I know people don't like this. I prefer the job vision card system personally. We had a very big problem for a very long time in sticking with mono element that you needed certain types of units to work. You needed three. And so inevitably you would have to wait certain periods of time to finally get your three. I know wind was notorious for years, like good wind units that keep coming out, but they didn't have a tank, and it wasn't until June finally came like 2 years into the game that mono wind was actually like somewhat kind of viable. And I feel like that's a really unbalanced way to run the game, where if you're just waiting for a role player for the mono element to work, by the time that role player comes around, you've probably already lost out on half the units. And you can still make the same case for job VCs. Quite frankly, we've seen that happen. We've seen some, job VCs come out, and units are already power crept now, so it doesn't insulate you from that. But I hated the feeling of mono element of needing a certain role and that role didn't exist.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Personally, I think that the job meta is more fun because there's more mixing and matching that you can do. So
Right.
kind of the same, basically the same thing that you were saying. I think I think for the most part, the mono element cards were pretty well done. I mean,
Oh
obviously,
yeah.
there's a couple of effects that you know each element didn't have. Like, of course, ice didn't have a luck card. Like, there's a few cards that were probably missing, but I think for the most part, each element was covered. Especially if you do consider, like, we still have some dual element cards that are still to go for the warm elements. So I don't know. I like that the new cards cover. I like it best when they cover four jobs, so I wish that they would stick to that rather than kind of putting some out with three. Um, but the biggest problem I think is just the adoption of the cards because of the price of them, and that's the biggest issue that they need to look at and fix.
I think it's a good point. Well said. We do have a couple other questions in here, but it's more chatter at this point, which is actually kind of nice. Love to see you guys interacting with each other here. I think some of the themes I'm seeing, though, are more questions about collabs, and I know that's always topical. People are excited for them in terms of what would we do for the next one, and what are our predictions. I know Debani saw just asked, would you give us an Origins collab and maybe like wrap Final Fantasy 1, 2, and 3 together, kind of get them all out of the way. Um, this topic could go down a huge rabbit hole. I don't even know where to start on it because we've talked about collabs as well. That I like collabs personally. I think until War of the Visions expands its permanent pool character cast in the storyline, I don't want a fourth version of Jaden, if you know what I mean. Like I want new lore characters, and if they're not going to do that, then I want collab units. I would prefer to have characters that I'm used to playing and love a little bit more than the War of the Visions characters, quite frankly, in these collab units. But man, they could do anything.
which
I'd be
is
happy.
which is another good point in Shrek's favor. Significant lore character, significant new character. So
Right, love
that's a
that.
cool development. And actually, there's been a couple of them that they've been introducing in the story as of late. So maybe there's more hope for that. In terms of like a potential collab, I know that like we said, JP, like people are speculating that it's coming any day now. Maybe even we'll see some news tonight or tomorrow about a new collaboration. Honestly, it could be anything. I saw some people talking about maybe Dragon Quest because DQ Tact is, which I think what the original collaboration with Zoma was maybe based upon.
Could be.
But
I
I
don't
don't
know it that
recall
well.
it.
Yeah.
But it could be Dragon Quest. Maybe we get the 140s for Zoma, and Sorrow. Maybe get the hero character as like a new addition would be really cool. They could do maybe bring back Persona. Would love to see Joker and Violet get their upgrades. Queen, I don't know. That's probably copium.
I think they're all copium.
They're definitely all copium for sure. But
Yeah, I'm definitely pulling for. People are talking about Final Fantasy 16 in chat. I'm pulling for that personally. That's still one of my favorites. I think it's overdue for a run. And obviously at FFBE, they opened the floodgates by featuring it right now. So I think the only problem you would run into is that Clive would be a fire unit, hands down. And I'm not so sure you go that route with Sephiroth still as strong as he is, where Sephiroth can still beat the mono water teams. So until you have a more solid answer for that, I think that's dangerous territory. But who knows? Yeah.
I mean, it would be great for newer folks who came into the game and got Sephiroth to kind of build out their teams. But who else would? I mean, you would probably have Jill. Is her name?
Yep.
Maybe she would
Should
be
be ice.
Ice.
Has to be.
So go with Gilgamesh there. Same kind of deal.
Right.
And then, um, what would you pick for the other ones?
So we were joking in Discord that Torgal, his wolf, would be the third unit, and we were joking
Yes,
that Howl we would have to wall the first unit ever. All 30 people in the guild have to pull the wolf. Um,
the first unit that we have to everybody needs.
Mandatory. No, you know what? I actually would really like Torgal, as to be honest. I don't think many animal units are worth making a main cast unit. Torgal is technically a main character in that game though, and he's with you the whole time, and he's got enough personality and interaction that I think it's a solid addition. It's not just some random NPC Moogle that they're throwing in there. He's an actual like main cast character. I think the only other one I would consider. I know they typically wait on villains in the initial run, so I don't think you could do any of the villains for the first run of 16. But I think as a protagonist, I think Sid would be super badass to put in as a lightning unit that we've been wanting for a while. So
Oh yeah,
that would be very fun.
yeah, he'd be great. I absolutely love that character in that game.
So
He was
good.
really cool.
Um, but yeah, that's it. So I don't see any other off-topic questions coming in. To be fair, we are at an hour and 10, so we probably are cutting things off here in a couple moments here. But pretty light week to be expected. It's really just the Trial of Reckoning coming in. I'm kind of excited to see. I know JP probably already released the titles that you can win, but I don't think I've seen them personally yet. I doubt I'm competing for any of them. I've kind of taken my foot off the pedal with Trial of Reckoning with the reincarnation system that high scores are just a lot harder to achieve. I know some of the PvE min maxers are putting their reincarnations in places I won't because I prioritize Guild War PvP. So it's still fun. And to be fair, I don't like Trial of Reckoning being in 1 week. Still, I prefer the 2 weeks. That I'll probably get my item and go to bed.
Yeah, I mean that's what really made me to take my pedal off. I was able to I won one for when Final Fantasy 15, no, not 15, Final Fantasy 8 came back, or not when the introduction of Final Fantasy 8. I was able to take the high score in that one, but since then I've really kind of took a step back with it. The 1 week is really killer.
It is. It is. And yeah, we'll wrap up. Last thing here, just this is a good question. Someone brought up sad to not have the WDL anymore. And those that don't know what it was a friendly league of about 40 of us that knew each other in the Discord. And Kayshawn would run it along with a handful of other big time contributors to do kind of like a private league that was cost limited, almost like a fantasy league of sorts. You would pick your units. We gave them uh, revised costs. So some of these units that were a lot older, we gave them lower cost to compensate. It was a lot of fun team building. And yes, unfortunately, Kayshawn did retire from War Divisions. He actually retired from YouTube and really all of his other content he was doing as well, taking some time away to focus on more important real life things and kind of get away from the time investment. And I'm sure the money investment and the more the time investment though. He worked very hard to do all of this between the announcing, the editing, the orchestrating, and so we all of course miss him greatly. He was one of my favorite contributors in our community with literally only the best things to say. But yeah, unfortunately, Kayshawn has uh, rode into the sunset.
Yeah, pour one out for him. The WDL went four seasons strong, I think. So I was able to take advantage of a couple of those. So shout out to Kason if probably not watching, but
Yeah,
we miss you and good luck with your future endeavors. I will say that I have kicked around the idea of not doing something as involved as WDL, but making some kind of auto tournaments here for the community that we've kind of built up with the podcast, and haven't really decided exactly when that's going to be, but still kind of kicking that idea around.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. All right. And then last thing here, moderately apathetic. Brad point out WDL is pointless now because only 10 units are viable. I'm going to disagree entirely on that. That was the beauty of the WDL. We gave units costs to appropriately reflect their value, and so I think the limit was 230 for the team cost, and some of the top meta units we were giving them costs of like 130. And we also had other rules that you couldn't have more than a certain kind. And I don't think any of the championship teams had a lot of these top meta units. It's one of the best things about the WDL was that you saw a lot of niche underrepresented units being used, which I miss in War of the Visions as a game. I feel like the cost limited structure of this game is probably underutilized to where it could be. And I think that's where some of those cost revisions, people bring it up, and I know sometimes we don't always agree with it, but I think now as the pool gets bigger, actually might be time to revisit that. We talk about what do you do to make units better? Well, the answer, we do MA3s, limit breaks, reincarnations, and the answer could just be no, more cost limited content and cut down their costs. Like that, it could be as simple as that.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea, to be honest.
Yeah. But I think that's it. Chris asked the last question here. Could you update a reincarnation priority list? And quite frankly, that list is the same as the tier list. If anyone wants to know who to reincarnate, it's the same as the tier list. It's the units you use the most, and it's the units that are the best. It's literally the exact same.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're not going to really be finding any diamonds in the roughs from like 2 years ago. You know, go with the most recent units, and you know that you'll be good.
Yep. But yeah, I think we'll pause there because we are at that hour and 15 moment. We got a lot of good questions here though, and talked about what little things are coming in the next week. But yeah, any closing thoughts here, JB?
Nope. Like we said, we're going to be off next week, so enjoy your trip or your vacation, and we'll have a we'll have the week off, and good luck for folks that decide to compete in Trials of Reckoning.
That sounds good. Thanks again, everybody, for being here and watching, and we'll talk to you all later.